Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pokemon Legends Arceus. So, we're going to fight our first Alpha Pokemon for reals this time, and it's one of the Sinnoh region's most favorite ones because of its cry. Yay!
What?
Oh, hello.
It's Cricketune.
It's Cricketune.
Oh,
Diddly-whoop.
I used one of those in Pokemon Reborn. I got kind of attached to it. I didn't know there was a Sinnoh Pokemon.
Is that a fan game?
Yes, it's one of the many Pokemon Essentials creations. Pokemon Reborn can best be described as that edgy game where they removed Gardevoir from the early game because someone figured out a winning strategy with Gardevoir and the developers just weren't having that.
Diddly-whoop.
I like Pokemon Reborn, but at the same time I hate Pokemon Reborn. So
Is that the one with the Reggies where they're like Reggie Ice is melted?
I don't know. But like Pokemon Reborn is basically like a fan's interpretation of a really edgy adult take on Pokemon that takes place in a region that's been polluted to hell and back. So it's basically what Pokemon would look like if it took place in Midgar.
Or in New York? Hey, topical. That's not going to be topical by the time this comes out. Yay. In case we have the memory of a goldfish going forward, New York City looked like it came out of 2008 FPS a couple of days ago.
No, it got the Mexico
Okay,
debuff.
so by the time this comes out, this will be fairly far in the past. So in early June of 2023, for you all in the future, there were a bunch of wildfires in Canada that blew lots and lots of smoke in the general direction of America. I say the general direction of America because, like, I'm pretty sure everywhere in the Northeast and the North and the Midwest felt this to some extent. In my particular area, there was enough smoke haze to turn the world yellow for a day. In New York, it was even worse.
Oh, God. Now you got Coldplay stuck in my head. Thanks, Lewis. Jeez.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, I guess the point I'm saying is that Pokemon did try to do an environmental message at one point, but because it's Pokemon, and if they ever try to do anything on a global scale ever, like in their story, it always ends up fucking up. It was bad.
Which time are we talking about? Are we talking about the weird energy crisis in Sword and Shield, or are we talking about the stuff in Black and White?
Well, not Black and White doesn't really have an environmental.
Or are we talking about Gen 3 with its weird Team Magma, Team Aqua thing?
I was thinking more Gen 3, but Gen 8 also has a poorly done environment. I have feelings about Gen 8's story, but I said I wasn't going to get into it, and so I'm not. But it is kind of a thing in Pokemon I've noticed where when they try to do personal stories, they actually end up being fairly good. Like Gen 1 basically doesn't have a story because it's all world building, and it's the first game. So
a kid embarks on a quest to become the champion and face rolls the Mafia by accident along the way.
Yeah, but like Gen 2,
Sorry about that.
but Gen 2 has a cute little story with the rival. It's not deep, but it certainly is refreshing for like a game of that size on the Game Boy. But like Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 6, and Gen 8 are all like attempting to be these big global like world shattering conflicts, and they don't work because Pokemon doesn't care enough about its story to have proper build up. Versus Gens 5 and 7 and 9. 9 has issues. Scarlet and Violet definitely has story issues that I'm sure we'll talk about as we go on, considering the similarities between this. But 5 and 7 are very like personable, like character interaction stories, and that's where they've done really well because it's about like Pokemon is much better about getting people to care about the people in the story as opposed to the world, which is strange considering that Pokemon, generally speaking, doesn't give a shit about its characters. Like Cynthia has exactly one personality trait, and that is having a hobby. And she's still like the most popular character in the franchise.
One of the reasons she's the most popular, she's like one of the most popular characters is that she's a legitimately good champion rival with a legitimately good team layout, which is a team loadout, I should say, which is not something I can say about Scarlet and Violet's champion. Worst
Gita
champion.
just kind of exists. Yeah. No. Gen 6 is worst champion.
That's
Look,
like the what's her name?
Look, Scarlet and Violet's champion has an ace that she should have led with because when you attack it, it poisons the battlefield and makes the rest of the battle a headache for your opponent. Why? Is that the last Pokemon you use? Come on.
I mean, Nemona's the real champion of the game. You want to know the champion that is the champion that you guys don't deserve is Alder. Alder's the best champion in the series. I said it.
And no one ever acknowledges him.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, his team sucks. Oh, he's just like, yeah, you want to know why? Because he's an 80-year-old man whose best friend died and he's done with this shit. But then he realizes that he's able to move on. And then by the time you fight him, like, it's just a friendly, he's found himself again. It's like, he's so good. And also his theme song's banging. And also he's a bug type trainer. Like, the champion being bug types, that's just redemption, man. Bug types were the worst. No, they weren't the worst type in the game. Poison was the worst type in the game for forever. It was the second worst type in the game for forever. So it needed the redemption.
A lot of the bug types early on were also poison types. So
yeah, you know what? That's true. But I mean, like, basically everything in Gen 1. Poison, like, taints
Poison
so many of the
too
Gen
much,
1 Pokemon. Like half of the grass types are also poison too.
No, every grass type except for 2 lines were poison type in Gen 1. Only Tangela and the Execute line were not poison.
Is it really all of them?
Yeah.
There's no yeah, you're right. Damn. Wow.
Gen 1 had zero concept of type balance. They just did not care.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, only having one dragon type makes sense to give it, like, this mythical element to it, but I don't get why there's more water Pokemon than normal Pokemon. Like, that's just not something that's ever made sense to me.
It makes sense biologically. There is a hell of a lot more water life than there is normal.
There is also a gameplay reason, because if you're in the water sections of the game, you want to have some variety, so having more Pokemon in that type would be fine. Problem is, the Pokemon Company didn't get that part of the memo, and they made a bunch of different water type Pokemon and still had you only run into Tentacool the entire game anyway. So I don't know what's going on with them there.
If they were going to make you run into a specific Pokemon, at least it's Tentacool, the cool one.
Yeah. Which is also part poison. God damn. Wow. They had to make every Pokemon worse. It's like, it doesn't even have to do with, like, them being weak to psychic type, which is the best type in the game. It's like poison is only good against grass in Gen 1. And guess what? Turns out all of the grass types are also poison, which resists itself, so it doesn't do anything.
So Tentacool was never really all that good originally, but one of the redeeming qualities Scarlet and Violet has is the not Tentacool.
No, no. Toadscool is cursed as hell. All right. It's cursed as all. I saw a Tentacool standing on its legs, and I was like, "This is wrong." All right, this is. And I found a shiny one of those assholes too.
And
like,
you'd think that it was some sort of regional variant of Tentacool, but it's its own species.
Yeah, that is a weird thing that Scarlet and Violet do, which I do think is kind of cool.
They have a water type that's a not Diglett, and it's beautiful. I think
I prefer that to, like, the regional variant thing that they've done, where it's just like, okay, for some reason, Raichu is a surfer dude on Alola.
Look, they've been doing this kind of shit with Pikachu every generation for the last 200 years. It's about time the other species got some love, you know?
Yeah, but then they're gonna make the new version that's based on I don't know, Russia is gonna have like a weird alternate Bidoof, and then we're gonna wonder what made our life first like this.
A weird alternate Bidoof. You know, I'd like to see that actually.
Actually, yeah. What is the Bidoof Russian Pokédex entry? Now that I think about it.
Oh God.
Okay.
This this plot point makes me angry, these guys, and I don't want to get too deep into it until later in the game.
Okay,
But-
this guy's name is Adaman. That just what little I know of linguistics, it kind of like sets off my brain. Isn't that like naming your guy Man?
I thought that just meant that his brother was Subtractaman.
No, it's a Subaman, I
It's
guess.
a play
right?
on adamant, which is diamond.
Yeah. I think that's the obvious thing, but it's also like when you remove the T, what do you got left?
Yeah, I'll get into that later, but I'm just gonna, just as a preview, I don't think Pokemon is sophisticated enough to deal with, differences between religious groups. Like, I'm sorry, you guys don't have, this is, you're out of your league here, guys.
I don't know. They almost pulled off N.
Well, so here's the thing about N. Like, N is answering a question. Well, Black and White's story is interesting because it asks a lot of questions and doesn't answer them. So it makes you think on your own. But are we treating Pokemon the right way is like literally a question that people have been asking the entire time. Like, isn't this animal abuse? It's like, well, and then the game asks, okay, well, is it? And it basically implies the answer is no, but it doesn't go as far as to straight up, say that Team Plasma is wrong at any particular point. Versus, like, there's no real reason why religion has anything to do with Pokemon, like, at all. So they're just adding it to, I don't know, make a point that they're not prepared to make.
Okay, here's the thing I have to say about the whole Pokemon animal abuse parallel thing. Animals don't have human-like minds. They don't think and express themselves in a way similar to humans. What Pokemon ultimately are animals as imagined by people who would like to imagine that their pet loves them the same way they love their pet. They'd like to imagine that their pet has the same emotional wavelength as a human, even if they're not quite as intelligent. And that's what Pokemon are. But what actual animals are creatures with brains so alien to us that we can barely comprehend them, and we can only and most of the time we think we're comprehending them. We're getting it completely wrong because we're just not wired to, understand how animals express themselves.
Because like outside of what we can do, there's no way we can directly communicate them in a way that they immediately understand us and we understand them.
For most animals.
For most
I'm not
animals,
saying
yes.
that we don't understand animals, but what I'm saying is that there are animal behavior experts who understand animals, and then there are the average Joes who watch a meme about the cute thing this wild animal did with the human who has a bond with them, and they think that's cute, and they totally internalize that expectation of all animals, and they'll say things like, animals are better than humans because they're grateful when you help them. And, well, I'm pretty sure they only halfway understand what's happening when you help them, actually. But, that's kind of the difference. The whole Pokemon fantasy world is a fantasy world based on the idea that animals are on our wavelength and can be understood on that wavelength. And that's a really nice fantasy to fall into, but it also throws off the entire dynamic when you bring in a question like animal abuse. Because, the Pokemon can make their own decisions in a way that animals can't. And
yeah, it's weird in that, like a Pokemon isn't like a squirrel. Like a squirrel isn't an animal that's domesticated. It's just out there. They can't really interact with humans all that much. Like,
Yeah.
if you try to interact with a squirrel, it's gonna, like, scratch you and then run away.
Yeah. The animals that are closest to what humans expect of pets are stuff like dogs and cats, who were specifically bred over centuries of experimentation and crossbreeding and all of that to be the way they are, to be pets.
Yeah. So but it's, but the thing is that you can't help but draw the parallels to, especially since unfortunately in the real world we have things like dogfighting and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I feel like it is a question that's worth examining, especially considering that again, since Pokemon are in a way like closer to humans than traditional animals, it's like do they like they you don't really know what they think, so it's like, what do they feel about fighting? Like, do they feel bad when they're fighting? It's like those are questions that are worth exploring. And Gen 5, basically what it does is it asks those questions and then expects you to think about the answer yourself, and it doesn't really provide much of its own opinion other than Gestis was making this shit up in order to distract you all so he could take over the world.
The eventual answer that the series does give through the Pokemon becoming more expressive as animation technology improved in the series is stuff like in Scarlet and Violet, when Arven's, dog Pokemon is finally, fit and ready to go, he actually wants to battle you right away. Like, he's up for it. It's like asking for a spar at the dojo. That's the way a lot of Pokemon seem to view Pokemon battles. But they can only view it that way because they think along human wavelengths.
Yeah, effectively what the game says is that Pokemon like being with the trainer if the trainer is a good person, effectively. That's basically the answer that it gives, because your Pokemon like you because you're the one who's training them versus it's kind of like, you see the Team Plasma people like hitting the Pokemon and whatnot, and they're clearly not happy about that. And so, which is I think about as non-committal of an answer that you can give in this situation. But
the interesting thing though is that in a way, Legends Arceus sort of connects to that and fleshes it out a little more by establishing what human and Pokemon relationships were like in the very beginning, before the trainer and Pokemon dynamic was established.
Which is, I think, one of the more interesting things about this game's story, for sure. Which we can talk about next time, only we're not going to because we're done for the day recording, and no way in hell do we remember this line of conversation by next part. So, sucks to be you, interested viewer who wants to hear more of this discussion.